Oh, hi. I thought I'd show you some records that I must say have been very important for me when I grew up, since, well, these are records that were played in my home when I was a child. Records once probably bought by my mother, but that I listened to a lot when I grew up before I started buying my own records. So what you're listening what you're now listening to is a instrumental country album by the New Decimal System, hits from the Johnny Cash register. It looks like this. And this is, I have to say, a very rare record, because I've been trying to find information about it on the internet, and there's almost nothing about this record. I know very little about the New Decimal System, what kind of band they were, at least, but they played wonderful. This is a great album. And my mother, when she bought it, she thought it was an album with Johnny Cash, because when you look at it, that's what it looks like, but it isn't. It's instrumental versions of 10 of his most famous songs on the Fontana label from 1970. And for many years I thought that this was a regular Nashville band, but now I'm quite sure that it's a British band led by, there are many names mentioned here, but the producer is Murray Cash, who I believe some sort of country and western enthusiast in the 1960s in England, and the arrangements are made by Peter Oakman. And I'm not sure, but there was a Peter Oakman who played with Lonnie Donegan in the 1950s. I'm not sure if it's the same guy, but everything looks as if this is actually a British recording. But feel free to enlighten me, because I have no idea. But I love it. It's wonderful. And as I said, totally unknown. This was probably a budget release on the Fontana special label, meant for to be some sort of easy listening, but actually it's very good instrumental country rock. Yeah, it's a record that I have been listening to this for all my life, and I think it's getting better and better every time I hear it. So, but does anybody know anything more about the New Decimal System, the group that is? Do you know if they recorded any other albums? Because I have no idea, and I've been searching info on the internet, but draw blank. Okay, that was quite a lot about this one. This is an album with a Swedish jazz organ player, Merit Hemmingsson, Huva, and it mixes rock, pop and Swedish folk music with organ and electric guitars and fiddles. And this is from 1971, and probably the record that made me interested in Swedish folk music, even though it's popified here. It's still very pleasant to listen to. She's still active today recording, Merit Hemmingsson. Lee Hazelwood, Cowboy in Sweden, of the LHI label from 1972, just like the New Decimal System. Alright, never mind. From the Swedish movie by Torbjörn Axelman, Cowboy in Sweden. I've never seen the movie, but I've listened to this album many times, and it's not just Lee Hazelwood, it's also the Swedish blonde singer Nina Wiesel, and Miss Susie Jane Holcomb, and also, but not on this album I think, but in the movie, George Baker's Selection, playing their well, one of the most famous songs, Little Green Bag. But that's not on this album. Okay. Do we have next? Oh yeah, my mother had a cassette version of this. When I first heard it, I thought, well, how incredibly boring. Boring songs, so not at all my style. To be quite honest, I still think this is a quite boring album, but I love Paul Simon. It's one of my absolute favorites. But it's just that the first Paul Simon album I heard was this, One Trick Pony, which I think is his worst. But he made many, and there's another Paul Simon album coming soon. Look forward to that. Then first Simon and Garfunkel record I heard was the Comeback concert album from Central Park. So I heard this quite a lot when I was a child. Okay, if Merit Hemmingsson's album Huva made me interested in Swedish folk music, this was the record that made me interested in classical music, and maybe a bit in jazz too. The Dutch group Exception, their first album from 1969. I've heard stories, this was played a lot when I was a kid, I've even heard stories that I, as a child, walked around and hummed the theme from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. I don't know if it's true, but people have told me that anyway. It's not unbelievable, because I listened to this and I thought it was really, cool. But then I once had a babysitter who was interested in records. This was a long time ago, as you understand. And then I brought this up and she said, no, I don't like classical music. What do you mean? This isn't classical music? I mean, classical music, that's opera with fat ladies with horns on their heads singing, whoa! This isn't classical music. But of course it is. Well, it's a bit jazzified and rockified, but I still like Exception. Although their leader, Rick van der Linden, passed away a couple of years ago. Okay, my mother was a child of the 60s, so she had quite a lot of Swedish 60s pop band on records, mainly on 45s of course, but she had some LPs as well. This was one of them, although this is a later reissue, Hepstars on Stage. This is a reissue from the early 70s on the FL label, but the original was released on the Olga label in 1965, and it's a live recording. Probably the first Swedish rock live album, and the sound quality is abysmal, but you can get a good idea on how popular they were, and it's fairly okay to listen to. I mean, it's something that I pick up every day, but still, this was played a lot when I was a kid, so I grew to learn to love it. Then we have another album with Swedish pop music from the 60s, Popligan, the Pop League. That was some sort of pop band contest between different orchestras. The top orchestras of the 1960s got Shades, sorry, the Streepers, Spotniks, Maskets, the Hepstars, of course, Ola and the Janglers, Tages, Hounds, the Caretakers, Science Poption, Leakings. But the winners were Shames, but we also have Slam Creepers on this. This was also played quite often when I was a kid. And another, Oppa. Many guys and gals who were around in the late 60s recognized this album. It's a live album from the Outdoor Museum Skansen in Stockholm, from radio show with lots of great Swedish interesting artists of the time, but also PJ Proby, is on this album, singing My Elusive Dreams, and Michael Cox, and Don Partridge, who I mentioned in an earlier video. So this record was also quite often played when I was a kid. Yeah, and now over to something a bit shameful. Not for me, but maybe for my mother. This, Svenska supvisor, Bengtsen och Rune Andersson, Swedish drinking songs by the two troubadours, Bengtsen and Rune Andersson. They made a live album while they sang different drinking songs together with an audience. And of course, they had a drink for every drinking song, which you should, of course. And in the end of the recording, they were maybe a bit, well, tipsy. The problem is, I heard this when I was a kid and I didn't understand anything of it. But, of course, some of the songs managed to get stuck up inside my mind. So, when I went to the kindergarten, I sang a few songs from this album, which was a bit, well, let's say my kindergarten teacher was quite shocked. My mother got a bad, strange reputation. Okay, of course I had to mention this one too. I mentioned Johnny Cash before. This album, Johnny Cash at San Quentin, was very often played when I was a kid. The thing I didn't understand was all the beats. Johnny Cash was talking in English. I didn't understand English then, of course, but he was talking between the songs, and suddenly we heard a beep. I didn't understand that at all. Well, of course, later when I started understanding English, I knew that it was censorship beeps, because the artist had something bad. But around 10 years ago, or maybe, well, more than 10 years ago, the concerts were released on CD and without the censorship. So I thought, well, let's hear what he said. And then it wasn't that bad. I had expected much worse words coming from his mouth than, well, you tune this son of a beep. Okay. Okay, and the final record that I'm going to show you, that, well, you see, it's been quite a wide array of different kinds of music styles that I've been showing in this video. So I thought, well, Amazing Ray, the military band of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, made me actually kind of like bagpipe music and big orchestra music, military orchestra music. This was a big hit in 1972. Can you imagine this being a big hit? Selling more than the glam rock groups of the day and so on. Was one of the strangest hits ever, but I can understand it when I listen to it, because it's beautiful music and beautifully played by these red-dressed guys with very shiny instruments, and some of you are wearing skirts. Okay, that's the last one I decided to show now, and I hope you found it somewhat entertaining. Bye bye.